So what's going on in the Cape Coral real estate market right now? Are properties even selling? Do we have an out of control inventory problem? Are prices going up? Are prices diving down? Those are all going to be some questions that I'm going to hopefully answer for you on this month's version of the Cape Coral Real Estate Market Update. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, my name is Dustin Guthrie. I'm a resident and near 20-year full-time real estate broker here in Cape Coral in Southwest Florida. And I do a video like this every single month where we really just dive into the Cape Coral real estate market. I'm going to give you all the facts and the figures and the statistics that the Cape Coral real estate market has put up in the last month. So we're predominantly going to be talking about the numbers that have been published from August 2024. I'm going to break things down by category. We'll talk about condos and Gulf access single family homes. We'll talk about off-water homes, vacant lots, and we'll even dive into the rental market a little bit later in this video. So make sure you stick around. The chapters are down there if you're looking for a specific segment of the Cape Coral real estate market to look into. But I do one of these videos every single month, and these are in addition to the weekly videos that I put out that are just on good informational topics on Southwest Florida, not just Cape Coral. We're talking about Fort Myers and Punta Gorda and Bonita Springs and all that great stuff. So make sure you're subscribed. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button so you can be around for these videos in the future. I do the best I can to just give you a lot of great information and give you a lot of great value with these videos, just because I know if I can do that, then odds are you're going to remember me when the time does come and you do need a realtor here in Southwest Florida, whether you're buying or selling a property. And of course, my contact information is right there on the screen. It'll be up in different segments of this video, but it's also down in the description of this video. So dip down there and take a look at that. You can call, text, or email me. You can even sign up to schedule a Zoom meeting if you're maybe out of town and still would like a face-to-face meeting. But I would love to hear from you. Would love to hear about your real estate goals and tell you a little bit about how I can help you out. So with that being said, let's dive into this September 2024 Cape Coral real estate market update. I always like to start out these videos just giving you the lowest sales of the month and the highest sales of the month, so we can kind of see a value of, or a range of values that we're looking at here in Cape Coral. So I'm going to give you the lowest sales that occurred in the month of August for both condos and single family homes, and then we'll take a look at the really fun ones, the most expensive sales that transferred there in the month of August 2024. So let's dive right into this and start with the lowest sales of the month. All right, so let's start out with the lowest condo sale of the month. That was this unit over there in the southeast section of Cape Coral. This condo is in the Yacht Club. It's on 4906 Victoria Drive, Unit 305. It was only on the market for 2 days, listed at $129,000. We haven't seen very many properties at all get under that $150,000 mark. So for this one to be at $129,000, I think it's safe to say that they were pretty motivated to sell this unit, and they got it sold just in 2 days, right at list price for $129,000. But this is a little 2-bedroom, 2 full bath condo, again down in the Yacht Club area. This is a 55 and older age restricted community. It doesn't allow pets either. And I know a lot of you out there like to have those pets. So sometimes these heavily restricted condo communities can get a little bit lower on the value side of things. But $129,000 for this unit looks to be in decent shape. It's certainly a little bit dated. It was built in 1974, and it looks like it's got some decor from probably right around that age. But just under 1,000 square feet. It was sold with all the furnishings in it. And again, sold in 2 days on August the 15th for full price, $129,000, and that was the lowest condo sale of the month of August of 2024. So let's dip over to the lowest single-family home sale. We haven't seen too many these single-family homes on these monthly market reports as I've done them over the last year or so. We haven't seen too many these single-family homes dip below $200,000, but we actually had several this past month, and it's mostly because either heavily damaged properties or properties that the builder didn't finish, so somebody would have to take on finishing the build. But the lowest sale this month was this property over in the northeast section of Cape Coral, 1722 Northeast First Terrace. And as you can plainly tell by the photos in here, this was a heavily fire damaged property up there in the northeast. And this one sold pretty quickly. Again, like I said, you get any of these properties that dip below 200,000, even in remarkably bad condition like this one, and they tend to get snapped up pretty quickly. So this one was listed for 150,000, sold full price in just 5 days. But obviously a heavily damaged property, just over 1,200 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, built in 1998, and certainly a ton of work to be done in there. That looks like they got to strip mostly everything out of the interior and probably the exterior of that property. But congratulations to the buyers and the sellers. Buyers, you've got some work cut out for you, but that's a pretty good deal even for a fire damaged property in the Northeast at $150,000. And this one sold right at the end of August on the 28th. Full price in 5 days, $150,000 was the lowest sale of the month for August 2024 for single family homes. All right, let's get into the fun ones, and that is the highest sales of the month for both condos and, again, single family homes. All right, the highest sales of the month of August, we're going to start out again with condos. When I say condos, and throughout this video, I'm going to be talking about condos, but I kind of lump everything together that's basically not a single family home. So we're talking about condos, we're talking about townhomes, or maybe attached villas, things like that, high rises, low rises, different things like that. I kind of lump that all in together as under the definition of condos in here. So this property that sold, I think the last 3 or 4 months, this neighborhood has been the top condo sale. But this property is 5811 Shell Cove Drive, Unit 112. That's one of the brand new 3-story townhome units that they have down in Cape Harbor. It's called Marina Villas, excuse me, down there. And this was part of phase 1. So this is finished out there. They're in the process of building phase 2 in Cape Harbor right now. But these are brand new construction townhomes. Again, 3 stories, 2157 square feet in them. They're 3 bedrooms, 4 complete bathrooms. It's actually 3 1/2 bathrooms, but they're on the water. So they're Gulf access townhomes down there. And they do have a 2-car garage here. And this one was listed at $784,500, and it sold full price again just in 5 days. So people are really liking those Marina Villas units down there. I know they've got quite a few reservations for phase 2, especially the ones on the water down there. So this one, this 2,157 square foot townhome, 3-story townhome, brand new in the Marina Villas section of Cape Harbor, was again the top sale. Again, that's happened in the last 3 or 4 months. It's been these particular units that have been, getting up close to $1 million there on the water in Cape Harbor. So congrats to the buyers and the sellers on that beautiful brand new unit there in Cape Harbor. All right, so let's get to the fun one. That's the highest single family home that sold in the entire month of August 2024 for the entire city of Cape Coral. And this time we're in a really, really cool community. I really love this community. It's only a single road there across the street from Cape Harbor. A lot of people consider maybe Cape Harbor, the single family homes there, to be one of the top neighborhoods in all of Cape Coral, but you might not realize that this neighborhood across the street is very exclusive, and there's a ton of really large custom homes on the water there, and it's called the neighborhood's called the Hermitage. I forget how many exactly homes are in there, but they're not many. There's probably maybe 20, and this home sold in there last month. Wasn't a brand new home, but it's a beautiful updated home built in 2009. Just under 7,000 square feet of living area in there with 7 bedrooms and 7 bathrooms, actually 5 full baths and 2 half baths. But again, just under 7,000 square feet of living area on a half acre there. And that doesn't even include the 90-foot by 63-foot outdoor living space and pool area behind the house there. The pictures just look absolutely incredible. And that's pretty par for the course over there in the Hermitage. There's a lot of really beautiful properties in that neighborhood. But this Gulf access custom home was listed at $4.87 million, and it sold in just 11 days. Can you believe that? High-end properties like this selling in 11 days still. But we saw this last month, and even though it was listed at 4.87, it ended up selling for 3.75, and that's pretty common for these super high-end luxury properties here in Cape Coral. It's really tough to price these things, so a lot of times you'll see situations where it gets negotiated down off that list price by maybe $1 million, like this did. This was in excess of $1 million. But certainly, congratulations to the buyers and the sellers on this beautiful sale of this beautiful home in the Hermitage. And congratulations to their realtors as well, because a $3.75 million sale was the top sale for the entire month of August for the city of Cape Coral. All right, so let's start to dive into the stats of the Cape Coral real estate market. I'm going to start off with the broader market, just some overall stats, and then we'll start breaking things down by these different categories like condos and Gulf access homes and single family homes. But just to start off, let's take a look at the residential market in Cape Coral. Take a look at this graph. This is a 2-year graph of the number of sales by month. And in the residential Cape Coral real estate market, last month in August, we sold a total of 502 properties. That's down from the previous month of 520. And it's to be expected, but in the winter and spring months, those are our really heavy hitting months here in Southwest Florida, and we're usually going to see a lot more sales in those months like February, March, April. And that's what you're seeing on this graph. So our high point for this entire 2-year graph was actually May of this year, where we sold 613 properties. So we're down into the slower summer months right now, but 502, frankly, isn't too bad for this time of year. And we're actually doing a little bit better than we were last year at this time. Last summer was kind of slow. And overall, if we look at this chart, if you take the first 8 months of this year, so January through August, we sold a total of 4,111 properties during those 8 months. If you look at those same 8 months going back last year in 2023, we only sold 3,989. So we've sold 122 more properties thus far this year than we did last year. So a lot of people feel like the market's maybe not as good this year as it was last year, but at least in terms of the number of sales we're seeing, we're selling about 3% more properties this year versus last year. Now, the pricing is a little bit different this year, and let's get into that next. So let's look at the median price. Again, we're taking into consideration everything. So these are off-water, on-water, single-family homes, condos, townhomes, all that kind of stuff. So this median price is the greater residential real estate market as a whole, but the median price in the month of August 2024 was $384,950. That's up slightly from July's number. July was at $380,000, and you can kind of see on this 2-year chart that we bounce around a fair amount. From month to month, we'll be up one month, a little bit down the next month, but a little bit of the overall pattern we can kind of pick up here is pricing is overall down slightly from this time last year, and certainly I think it's clearly down from where we were 2 years ago. If you look at the very first bar on this graph, that was August of 2022, 2 years ago, and the median price for that month was $415,000, and at basically $385 this past month, that represents about a 7.25% drop in prices. Now, I always bring this up every single monthly market report, but keep in mind we've had a couple of years here of pretty strong inflation, and real estate's generally a pretty good hedge against inflation. So if you take into consideration that we may have 12, 14 or so % of inflation over the course of the last 2 years, maybe even more than that, and you make the assumption that real estate keeps up with inflation, we're talking about a correction that's probably closer to 20%, maybe even a little bit more than that, depending on what the actual real number of inflation is. So I think that's always important to keep in mind, and definitely keep that inflation in the back of your head when everybody's been waiting for this huge big correction, and we haven't really seen it in terms of the actual prices. But keep in mind, the value of money is a fair amount less than it was 2 years ago. So 7.25% drop in prices from 2 years ago. Just August of 2023, the median price was $390 last year, so we're only down 1.3% from August of last year. But again, we kind of tick up and down a little bit month to month here, and I really think if we wanted to average these numbers out, we're probably looking at anywhere from a 3 to 5, maybe 6% reduction in prices overall this year versus last year. So overall, maybe we're about 5 or 6% down the last 12 months, and maybe something closer to 7 or 8, maybe even 9% from August of 2022. So total market median price last month, $384,950. Let's talk about the inventory. The big story this year has been the inventory, meaning the number of active listings on the market. And certainly we've had way too much inventory on the market at the start of this year. Take a look at this graph. Again, 2 years. You can see over the course of 2 years, we really ramped up heading into last winter, and inventory peaked out pretty high at 4309 was the high point on this graph, and that was April of this year. Now we're down month over month since then, so we're heading in the right direction in terms of the active number of listings out there. We're still selling a fair amount of properties. We're not selling quite as many as that are coming on the market, but we're seeing a lot more properties that are overpriced being taken off the market, and sellers either choosing to just live in them or use them, or maybe turn them into rentals. And we're going to get in the rental market here in a little bit, and you're going to see the inventory is really spiked on available rental properties. And I think part of that is because some of these sales that haven't, these for sale properties that haven't sold are coming off the market and moving over into rentals. But total number of properties on the market in August was 3664. That's an overall reduction from the high month of April of 15%. So our inventory, again, is heading in the right direction, but we're still up about 16.1% from this time last year. In August of 2023, we only had 3,155 properties on the market, and certainly 2 years ago, it was even lower. In August of 2022, there was only 2,632. So we are very still up north of where we should be in terms of the number of properties that are available out there. We've got about 39.2% more properties available now than we did in August of 2022. So we've got some work to do still, but we're heading in the right direction, and that's good news if you're a seller. Still got a lot of overpriced properties out there, and we're going to talk about those, especially when I get into the advice for sellers later in this video. But I think the faster that we can get some of these overpriced listings off the market, the quicker this buyer's market is going to turn back into a seller's market. And we'll look to see these lowering interest rates as we're getting later into the year to help out with that as well and increase that buyer demand. But overall, heading in the right direction on inventory. And okay, let's start breaking these down by individual categories. I always like to start off with the biggest market share category that we have in the Cape Coral real estate market, and that is off-water single-family homes. So we're going to be talking about single-family homes that are not on a body of water, they're not Gulf access, they're not on a freshwater canal or lake. So let's get right into these off-water homes. Okay, so again, we are talking about single-family homes that are not on a body of water. This is by far the largest segment of the Cape Coral real estate market. We see far more of these properties sell in any given month than any of the other categories that we're looking at today. So let's take a look at this first graph. Again, this is a 2-year graph, month to month, for number of sales per month. And again, the total market last month, for the month of August, there were 502 properties that sold last month. 356 of those were in this property category. So 356 single-family off-water sales for the city of Cape Coral in the month of August. That's just actually one down from the last 2 months. We had 357 of these sales in July and 357 of these sales in June. So we've stayed pretty consistent so far this summer. The high point was actually back in May. The high point for this year was back in May when we sold 401. So we're down a little bit, but that's to be expected during these slower summer months. And actually, historically, when you look at especially the last 2 years, we've had a pretty good summer for this category of properties. So 356 sales last month for off-water single-family homes. Another thing worth mentioning in this segment, a really good chunk of these sales were brand new construction property. When you break this down by properties that were built either 2023 or 2024, there's 146 of those, which represents 41% of the market share for this type of property. There's a lot of production builders. Most of those sales were going on up in the northeast and northwest sections of Cape Coral. Their lower priced properties up there sell pretty regularly. So 41% of these 356 properties were brand new construction homes. If we break this down again by maybe homes with pools and homes without pools. It's usually about 30, 60, 35, 65. So, 65% of the properties don't have pools and about 35% do. There's 122 sales last month of off-water pool homes. So let's jump over to the median price for this category. And again, 2-year graph, you can see here, there's a noticeable trend and a slightly downward trajectory over the last 2 years, but again, it's not very pronounced. It's not as pronounced as some of the other categories, but our median price for these off-water single-family homes last month was $369,000. That's up slightly from July, which is $363,000. And the high point on this chart was actually August of 2022, when the median price for this type of property was just under $390,000, $389,950. So we are down about 5.4% over the course of the last 2 years, and actually we're pretty on track to where we were last year in 2023. The median price for August was $370, so we're only $1,000 less than we were last year. But if you take everything into consideration, we're about 5.5% or so down in terms of pricing over the course of the last 2 years. And if you want to break this down further by pool homes and non-pool homes, the homes in this category that did have a pool sold, the median price for those was $422,500. So if your home was not on the water and it had a pool, you can expect we're in that low to mid 400s range, and it's about $75,000 more this month than homes without pools. So the homes that did not have pools, the median price for those was $347,995, so $348,000. If you want to break that down again by the new construction properties across the board, of those, what was it, 146 new construction properties, the median price for those was $379,500. And again, most of those are on well and septic up in the northeast and northwest. That $380,000 price range is normally going to get you a property that's in the northern sections of Cape Coral, still on well and septic. If you're down in the southern parts of the Cape, there's not as many of those sales, but they generally get up into the high 3s or 4s. So median price across the board last month, $369,000 for off-water pool homes. Let's take a look at the inventory. Similarly to the broader market in general, we kind of peaked out in terms of our inventory in the month of April. We had 2,442 of these off-water single-family homes on the market in the month of April, and we've kind of slowly descended as we've gotten into the summer. So last month, in the month of August, we had 2,125 of these off-water single-family homes on the market. It's about an increase of about 10.7% from this time last year. August of 2023, we only had 1,919 single-family off-water homes on the market, and we certainly had a lot fewer than that back in 2022. At the start of this graph, back in August 2022, we only had 1,628. So inventory-wise, we're up about 30.5% from where we were 2 years ago. So pricing's down a little bit. Our sales are still relatively healthy, but we've got some work to do on the inventory front because, again, we are up 30.5% just in the last 2 years and almost 11% from this time last year. So we'll look forward to the remaining months of the summer and going into the fall, and hopefully this downward trajectory will continue for the inventory, and we'll start to see some more manageable inventory numbers in this property category and others. So that's your single-family off-water homes. Let's go ahead and dive over to everyone's favorite, which is the Gulf access single-family home. So these are going to be properties that are on a canal or even the river, on a saltwater body of water with boating access out to the Gulf of Mexico. Let's take a look at these. Okay, so Gulf access single-family homes. This is sort of our flagship property type here in the city of Cape Coral. Obviously, we're very, very well known for our saltwater canal properties here in the city, and this is we tend to be a little bit slower for this category of property in the summer. This is very much a product that is well liked by our seasonal residents and the retirees and the folks that like to come down here in the winter and spring months. So we don't see as many of these sales. Condos are kind of similar in the same respects. So we don't usually see very many sales in the summertime versus in the winter and spring months. But let's take a look at this graph again. This is the number of sales over the course of the last 2 years. And you can see from this graph, we sold 66 of these homes last month in the month of August 2023, which is a pretty solid number for middle of summer. That's actually up from 63 the previous month in July. So we've had a pretty healthy start to the summer here for these Gulf access properties. You'll notice the high point on this chart was actually May of this year when we sold 109 of these. We sold 109 Gulf access single family homes back in May of 2024. And just slightly less than that, actually, in the month of April, we sold 105 back in April. So we've had a pretty solid year, at least in terms of the number of sales for this category of properties so far in the first 8 months. And actually, when you compare it to 2023's number, thus far in 2024, we've sold 651 Gulf access single-family homes, and that's about 9% more than the first 8 months of 2023. Last year, at this point, we had only sold 598. So 9% more single-family Gulf access sales this year versus last year. Let's jump over to the median price chart. Again, going back 2 years here. So the median price for these Gulf access single-family homes, and again, these properties run the gamut to from everything in the even high 300s, low 400s, all the way up to that beautiful home in the Hermitage that sold last month for $3.75 million. So there's a pretty wide range of properties and property values in this category. But last month, the median price was $776,250. That's up from the previous month of $705,000. You'll generally notice that this kind of bounces around on this graph, and that's mainly because our sample size is not very much. When you're talking about 60-some properties in any given month, especially here in the summertime, there's not as much data, so that median price can jump around depending on if a few more expensive properties sold one month or a few less expensive properties sold. But $776,250 was the median price last month. The 2-year high on this chart was actually, if you take out October of 2022, just because that was a weird month, that was right after the hurricane. So if you get rid of that, the 2-year high on this chart was actually February of this year, when it was $852,500 was the median price for Gulf access homes. So we're a solid $75,000 less than that high, but again, we're jumping around quite a bit because the sample size is not very big. I don't necessarily think that indicates a significant trend in the downward direction. I just think we sold a few more higher end properties in the month of February versus last month. So overall, looking at this chart, it's been pretty consistent. We're mainly sticking around the mid to high 700s. Occasionally we dip up over 800,000, but I've mentioned this in previous videos, and I think the situation with this is, the folks that are buying this category of property, they have a certain amount that they're willing to spend, and they're still spending that amount, whether it was 2 years ago or today, but they're buying what that same price buys is a little better quality property. So, I definitely think prices have softened, but, as you can tell in this chart, everything's been kind of flat. And I think the reason for that is, again, people are spending the same amount that they did in 2022 for a property like this, but they're just buying something that's a little more upgraded, maybe slightly larger property, maybe closer to open water, maybe it has, impact windows and doors. Those are very popular since the hurricane these days. So, I do think it's still a buyer's market for all categories of property, especially Gulf access. And, the folks that are out there spending the same amount of money that they would 2 years ago are going to find that they can buy a little bit better product for that same price. Let's break this down just for fun by the different quadrants. So what you can expect the median price to look like in these different quadrants. So again, Cape Coral is divided into northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. Only 3 of those have Gulf access properties. There are no Gulf access homes in the northeast section, just the southeast, southwest, and the northwest. So let's break that down, starting with the southeast. The median price last month for the Southeast Cape in terms of Gulf access single-family homes was 697,500. That was the median price for the southeast section of Cape Coral. Usually those are going to be a little bit older properties. That was the first quadrant to sort of see some development back starting in the 50s and 60s. And so typically you're going to see older homes on the canals over there, which is probably why that's a little bit less than the median across the board. 697.5 for the southeast. If you go over to the southwest, we're actually a little bit higher. Those properties tend to be a little bit newer, not necessarily brand new, but most of them are in the post 2000 date range for the construction. But the Southwest median price last month was $864,500. Basically $865,000. So we're almost $100,000 more than the overall median. And because mainly you're getting some of these higher end areas like Cape Harbor, like the Hermitage, some of these higher end neighborhoods with these bigger properties on it that are selling for $1 million plus, that kind of drags the number up a little bit. Interestingly enough, when we moved to the Northwest, the median price for the Northwest was $942,500. If you've watched my other videos, I'm a really big fan of the Northwest. It's where I live. I think the future is so bright for the Northwest section of Cape Coral. But the reason I think that you're seeing a median price for the Northwest of $942,500 is mostly because the transfers for Gulf access single-family homes that have been in the Northwest section of Cape Coral have predominantly been higher-end, newer properties. So you have a lot more $1 million+ sales there. The resales in the Northwest for Gulf access single-family homes have been a little bit slower, so you don't see as many of those sales, of those transfers, and as a result, you don't see enough of those resales to kind of bring the number down a little bit. So I definitely think the Northwest is a bargain for what you can buy in terms of a Gulf access single-family home. But the reason that median price again is almost $950,000 is because most of the sales are just brand new construction properties, and a lot of them are $1 million and over. So now let's jump over to the inventory side of Gulf access single family homes. Again, this chart looks very familiar with what we've seen already. The inventory chart peaks out in February of this year at 905 of these properties, and we've come down, actually 22% we're down to 708 properties were for sale in the month of August for single-family Gulf access homes, and that's been a month-over-month consistent drop since that high point in February. You can see we kind of ran up pretty quickly there, really just in the last year, and we still got some work to do in this category, just like the other ones. But August of last year, we were only 565 of these properties on the market, so we're still up a solid 25.3% from where we were this time last year. So we got a little bit more work to do to get some of these properties either sold or taken off the market. Because when you look at this over the course of 2 years, August 2022, that was just before the hurricane, we only had 494 of these homes on the market. So we're still up a solid 43.3% from where we were 2 years ago, and what I would consider to be a little bit more healthy inventory number. So we've got some work to do. Again, just like a lot of these other property categories, we've got a lot of homes sitting out there on the market that are overpriced, that either need to get repriced into something a little more legitimate that could wind up in a sale, or they need to just be taken off the market. We're seeing some of that happen. Particularly this category, this inventory hopefully should continue to go down through the remaining months of the year. When we get into the winter months, we'll probably start to see more of these properties come on the market. This is, again, very much a category that experiences more activity in those winter and spring months. So we'll probably see at least this inventory number maybe flatten out as we get towards December and certainly January. So we'll just keep an eye on this, but hopefully we can make some more progress on this inventory front before we get to those months, and maybe get down into the lower 600s or something a little more manageable. I think that would be a lot healthier for this segment of the Cape Coral real estate market. But overall, still pretty good news for this category. We'll see what happens with the rest of these the months in 2024, and see if this inventory kind of flattens out or if it starts to go back up as we get into the winter and spring. But overall, we're heading in the right direction on Gulf access homes, just like we are on the off-water properties. All right, let's get over to condos and townhomes. We're going to run through these really quick. All right, so again, I'm lumping everything together. These are on-water, off-water condos, high-rises, mid-rises, low-rises, townhomes, attached villas. I just put all that together because, especially during the summer, we don't have a whole lot of these sales. It's probably it's more extreme on this category of property even than in the Gulf access single-family homes in terms of the activity levels in the winter versus the summer. And we've had a somewhat slow summer. For condos are just a little bit tough right now to sell. The monthly or quarterly HOA fees for a lot of these communities have gone up. We've talked about the reasons for that in previous videos, but basically it's mostly due to reserves being depleted from Hurricane Ian, insurance rates going up a little bit, and then also, especially for the properties for the condo associations that are 3 stories and larger, there was a new law that went into effect in the wake of that terrible Surfside, Florida condo collapse. So now these condo communities that are 3 stories or more need to set aside a certain number of reserves for where structural repairs and engineering reports to be done. I think it's once the building hits 30 years old, they got to do it every 10 years. So they've got to set up a special side fund for that. And for all those reasons, the fees, especially over the course of when we switched from 2023 to 2024, a lot of these places went up a fair amount, and that's putting downward pressure on the number of sales in terms of condos. But let's take a look at the 2-year graph here. You can really see that it's pretty extreme, winter versus summer, and we've had a pretty slow summer to condos so far. We only sold 31 of these condos last month in the month of August. That's down from the high point of this year, which was in March. We sold 73 condos in March of this year, and the high point on this 2-year graph was actually March of last year, and prices actually peaked out in spring of last year as well. Most of our prices for single-family homes peaked out in 2022, but condos actually peaked out in 2023. So that's interesting, and we'll look at that pricing here in just a second. But 31 condos sold last month. That's down from July's number of 38. So we're just in the midst of the slow season for condos right now, and this is the only category where we've sold fewer properties this year in the first 8 months versus last year in the first 8 months. We've only sold 361 condos so far this year. Last year was just slightly higher at 367. If you want to break this down a little bit further by Gulf access condos, about 42% of these sales last month were Gulf access condos. There's 13 of these sales. So let's take a look at the median price overall. Here's the 2-year chart again. We've seen a pretty solid decline over the course of the last couple of years, and definitely in the last 12 months. But the median price for condos last month was $274.9, so basically $275. It's down slightly from July's number of $277.5. Again, we don't have a big sample size when we're talking about just 31 properties. It's not a big sample size, so month to month, these numbers will kind of fluctuate depending on if there are a few more expensive condos that sold in any given month or a few less expensive ones. But going back to the high point on this chart, which was April of last year, the median price for condos in April of last year was $305. So when you consider that number down to $275, that represents about a 10% decrease in just a little over a year for condo prices. And again, I think one of the main reasons for that is certainly interest rates, but these higher HOA fees are just putting affordability issues out there for some of these buyers. So we're down a little bit in price, about 10% in the last year. If you look at Gulf access condos, they're not too much higher than the median price. Across the board, it was at $275. The median Gulf access price for condos last month was $291.9, $292,000. So there's a few deals out there to be had on condos right now, but let's take a look at the inventory out there. So again, we're running into the same issue. Luckily, even though this category, we've sold fewer properties this year than last year, our inventory has started to come down from the high point. The high point on this chart was February of this year, where we had 527 condos on the market. So we're down to the current rate, which is 422, or that was the rate for April. 422 condos on the market in the month of April. So we're heading in the right direction. We've dropped about 20% from the high point. Again, just like the Gulf access single family homes that we just talked about, there's probably going to be a few more condos hit the market as we get into the winter and spring months. So we'll just keep an eye on this. Hopefully we'll make some more progress, and that inventory number will continue to go down in the remaining months of this year. And then maybe if we do get an influx of new listings on the market, if anything, it'll maybe flatten off and not go back up. So we'll keep an eye on that. But if you look at this, just last year in August of 2023, there was only 375 condos on the market. So we're up about 12.5% from where we were last year. If you go all the way back 2 years ago, to August of 2022, there was only 251 condos on the market. So we're still up about 68% of number that looks closer to where we probably need to be to see some leveling off in pricing for this category of property. So again, we'll continue to keep an eye on it. It's tough to sell condos these days. If you're a condo seller, you need to just make sure your property is priced right, and do whatever you can to kind of set it apart from the extra inventory that's out there, because we still got a lot of condos on the market. We're just not selling very many. Hopefully those sale numbers will start to pick back up when we get into the winter and spring months, and I'll keep you up to speed on that. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump over to vacant lots. I always want to touch on vacant lot sales and statistics with that, and then we'll talk about the rental market. Okay, so vacant residential lots. Again, we're talking about, these are all single family home lots. I'm not talking about multifamily or commercial lots. These are just strictly residential single family home lots. Here's the 2-year chart for the number of sales per month. We had a really slow month in July. We only sold 126 back in July, so it was really good to see us bounce back and transfer 168 of these vacant residential lots last month. I was concerned that we were seeing a downward trend in the lot market, but it was nice that we bounced up a little bit. The high point on this was back in May of last year. We sold 239 single family vacant residential lots in May of 2023. But you go back 2 years, and August of 2022, we only sold 175. So we're about where we were 2 years ago. Again, we kind of peaked and then came back down there in the middle of the last 2 years. But 168 of these properties is still a pretty healthy number to see. The vast majority of these properties are in the northern sections of Cape Coral, so in the northeast or the northwest, usually up there where the well and septic places are. Those areas haven't been quite filled in as much yet as the lots in the southeast and the southwest. But we've certainly sold fewer lots this year versus last year. In the first 8 months of 2024, we sold 1,440. Last year, we had a really good year. First 8 months of 2023, we had sold 1,857 vacant residential lots. So we're about 22.5% fewer lots that have been sold this year versus last year. And out of those 168 that we sold last month, only 17 of them were Gulf access. We don't, especially in the summertime, we don't see very many Gulf access lots transfer. So 168 was the number last month. Now let's dive over to the median price, because even though we sold 22.5% fewer lots this year so far than last year at this same time, pricing has been remarkably flat over the course of the last 2 years. Median price for all of those 168 sales last month was $50,000 even. That was just down slightly from the previous month, was $52,750. But if you look at this, I mean, we've really stuck around that $50,000 mark. There have been a few months where we kind of trickled under it a little bit and got down into the mid to high 40s. but for the most part, we've stayed right around that $50,000 mark for the last 2 years. So if anything, it's good to see some consistency. So even though we've sold a fewer number, they're still selling for right around where they sold 2 years ago. If you want to look at those 17 Gulf Access single-family home lots that sold, the median for those sales was $240,000. Again, most of those sales were in the northwest section, where there's still a few more lots available up there. And that's a pretty typical price for what you're seeing up in the northwest. They're going to get into the low to mid 200s depending on the location and whether or not it has a seawall, things like that. But 240 was the median price for Gulf Access lots, and overall $50,000 was the median price for vacant residential lots. Let's take a look at the inventory in this category, because it's the exact opposite of what we've seen in the other residential categories. We've been on a consistent downward trajectory when it comes to inventory, and we only had 2,448 vacant lots for sale last month in August. That's down from August 2022 when we had 3,167. So still plenty of lots selling. There's fewer lots out there available. A lot of these lots, especially the overpriced ones, they could sit out there. It's much easier to leave a lot on the market versus like a single family home. And so you're seeing a lot of these overpriced listings sitting out there, and they're just not moving. They might have been on the market for 2 or 3 years in some cases. But the ones that are selling for, roughly about $50,000, at least average. And our inventory seems to be coming down a little bit. It has flattened out this year, but hopefully we'll continue to see the inventory kind of trickle down a little bit and still remain healthy in terms of the number of transfers. But if you want to look at Gulf Access single-family home lots that were available last month was 388. So when you're only selling 17 of those, 388 is a big number to have out there. So still plenty of high-priced Gulf Access lots out there. But again, I'm not going to draw any conclusions on pricing for that. I think pricing for the Gulf Access lots, just like the vacant residential off-water lots, they've been pretty consistent. And if you take those Gulf Access or the waterfront lots out of this, the median price for off-water single-family home lot, especially in the Northeast or Northwest, is going to be somewhere in the mid-40s. That's pretty typical. So median was 50. That's probably because we had a few lots in the southern sections of Cape Coral that were on city water and sewer. Pull that number up. Those lots generally transfer for somewhere around anywhere from 90 to maybe 110,000 versus the Northeast and the Northwest, where they're generally going for somewhere in the low to mid, maybe high 40s. But 2,448 vacant lots were for sale last month, and we sold 168. All right, let's really touch base real quickly on the rental market, because it's increasingly an important part of this Cape Coral real estate market. Okay, so residential rental properties. Why do I feel like this is an increasingly important part of the Cape Coral real estate market? Well, like I showed you on those graphs and those different property categories, inventory for sale properties kind of peaked out in the winter, spring months, and we've slowly seen that come down. Is that because we're selling more properties than are coming on the market? It's really not. We're generally seeing in any given week, new listings coming on the market really are outpacing the number of sales that we're seeing, but inventory is coming down because people are taking properties off the market. They're either deciding to just wait out the market, the buyer's market. They're not getting their numbers, so they're taking the property off the market and either living in them, or they're doing what I'm going to show you now is they're transferring them over to rental properties. So properties sit on the market, it's overpriced, it's not selling. Rather than lowering the price, a lot of these homeowners are taking those properties off the sale market and putting them on the rental market. So let's take a look at the inventory for available rental properties here in Cape Coral. And if you're trying to rent a property, this is not a good graph to look at. We had 2 years ago in August, we had 5,493 properties that were available for rent. and then it kind of immediately dipped down after the hurricane. And ever since then, we've been on a steady upward trajectory. And August of 2024 was the 2-year high for this graph. We had 7,908 residential rental properties available out there for rent right now. And I'll tell you something, these numbers are only from our internal realtor MLS. These numbers are generally not including some of these brand new construction, huge apartment complexes that are coming online more and more these days. Places like, higher end, there's like the Bimini Basin project down there, but there's a lot of really large 200-300 unit apartment complexes that are starting to come online, and as they do, they're just stacking inventory on top of this 7,908 properties that are on the MLS out there. So we're going to see more and more of this inventory hit the market. And again, if you're trying to rent a property, that's not good news for you. So the inventory for rental properties right now, we're up 17.3% from where we were in August of 2023. We only had 6,741. And we're up in total about 44% from where we were in August of 2022. So I don't see these numbers going down very, very soon. I was speaking to the property manager colleagues of mine. It's increasingly difficult to find good qualified renters out there, and there's just a lot that you're competing against if you have a rental property now, and that's translating into lower rents. So let's take a look at the median rental price in the city of Cape Coral. And again, these numbers don't take into consideration those apartment complexes. This is just our internal MLS. But the median price for last month was $2,213, and that's consistently down from where we were 2 years ago. And in the wake of the hurricane, it kind of bumped up a little there, and then we've kind of consistently been down since really October. But this number bounces around a little bit depending on what ends up renting. But a couple years ago, we were anywhere from 2,400 to maybe even 2,500 or 2,600 in terms of the median rental price. And so we've really come down quite a bit at just over $2,200. We had a workforce housing issue here for a long, long time. There was not enough rental properties, which is why we saw all of these new construction apartment complexes start to go in. But now we've kind of maybe overdid it a little bit, and so we've got an inventory issue. So if you're a homeowner and you're looking to rent your property, frankly, you've kind of been punched in the nose a little bit over the course of the last 12 or 18 months. Your costs have gone up. Certainly insurance has gone up. Maybe taxes have gone up for you. Some other hard costs have gone up for you. And in the meantime, your rental rates that you're able to get for these properties have gone down. So if you're thinking about renting your property, I would try to get it on the market as soon as possible and try to get it priced right so you can get a qualified renter in there before this gets much worse. I don't know how worse it's going to get. But if this chart is any indication, it's going to continue. Those median rents are going to continue to go down. And the more these big apartment complexes come online, the faster a pace that will happen. So good news if you're a renter, not so good news if you're an investor that maybe is renting your property out. But overall, inventory is up and rental prices are down, and we'll continue to monitor this as we move into the remaining months of the year. All right, so if you're a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market in the summer of 2024, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be looking out for? What do you need to consider? What are some things that I recommend for you as a buyer? Well, it's still very much a buyer's market. You're very much in the driver's seat, a lot more at least than you have been in the last few years. And certainly this entire year so far has been pretty good for buyers. We've got high inventory out there, so you've got sort of your pick of the litter, so to speak, amongst the listings that are available out there. And you can use that as leverage. There's not as many buyers in the market right now, so you're a little bit more of a commodity for these sellers. And so you can negotiate yourself a little bit better price and a little bit better terms versus this time, let's say 2 years ago. So it's very much a buyer's market. And I foresee it continuing to be a buyer's market for probably the rest of this year at least. Also, interest rates are coming down. If you're a financed buyer, that's great news for you. You need to check the mortgage rates. They have been this earlier this summer as north of 7, certainly 7.5% in some cases, and now we're seeing them dip back down below 7 in some cases. So hopefully that trend will continue as the Fed reduces these interest rates, and we'll see actual mortgage rates come back down considerably. We're targeting hopefully sometime next year for that to get maybe around 6 or maybe even a little bit under 6, and I think that's going to really help our buying demand out for our market. Still plenty of people that want to be here, still plenty of people that want to buy, and I know just anecdotally there's a lot of folks that I'm in contact with that are sitting on the sidelines right now waiting for a little bit better environment in terms of the mortgage interest rates. So it's a good buyer's market. You can move your weight around a little bit more as a buyer these days. But I want to show you a chart just to give you a little more realistic expectations of what the market's actually doing right now. Take a look at this chart. This is the list price to sale price ratio. This is the average across the entire Cape Coral real estate market. What this basically shows you is if a property sells, they can expect the sale price to be this percentage of what their list price is, their final list price. And if you look on this chart, it kind of went up from July to August, but the average property in the city of Cape Coral that sold last month sold for 98.6% of the list price. So if you're out there and you're seeing a property that's priced right and it looks priced right compared to the other listings that you're seeing out there, the average price you can expect to pay on that, let's say if it's $1 million, if it's listed at $1 million, the average price last month would make that property sell for $986,000. So you're not seeing these huge discounts. You're seeing discounts in terms of the list price that's coming out. So you're approaching the market. You're seeing list prices that are less in many cases than a year or two ago. But you're not seeing these we're not seeing these big discounts being taken off the list price. Certainly the terms are better in many cases, and especially for the new construction properties, there's a lot of incentives like flex cash or better interest rates or interest rate buy downs or something like that that are not really factored into this statistic. But overall, the properties that are selling still fairly close to list price. Now, the other side of that is, versus the original list price, a home that's just come on the market usually has to undergo a couple price reductions before it gets sold. And that's what this chart represents. And you can kind of see definitely since, the end of last year, the original list price to final close price ratio has gone down a fair amount. So a property may have started out at $1 million, but the final sale price, at least last month, the average was about 95%. So that property, what this is saying is that property that was initially listed at $1 million finally sold for $950,000, but that list price was probably reduced a few times before it did sell, and when it did sell, it sold for, again, around that 98.5% list price to sale price ratio. So I hope that makes sense. I hope I didn't muddy that up too much, but I bring this up just to set some expectations for yourself that there's still plenty of buyers out there for the listings that are priced right, and hopefully, especially if you're working with somebody like me who's been doing this a long time, hopefully we can do a little bit better than the average of that 98.5%. But we're just not seeing a whole heck of a lot of buyers come in there and be able to whack 20% off a list price as long as it's listed appropriately. If it's priced right, it's going to sell for pretty close to list price still. So be smart as a buyer. You've got plenty of choices out there right now. You've got a window of opportunity right now, but again, be wary as that interest rate kind of comes down, and as long as we don't slide into a recession or anything like that, our inventory rates are coming down, our buyer demand is going to be coming back up as these interest rates coming back down. So don't miss your window here. I don't know when that window closes on you, but like I said, if we don't slide into a recession or something unforeseen doesn't happen, it looks like prices will probably start to stabilize sometime next year and then eventually start to go back up as we get the inventory numbers down and the buying demand stays high. So be smart. you're in the driver's seat right now as a buyer, and if you are a buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, reach out to me. My contact information is right there. I would love to help you out, find out what you're looking for, and guide you in the right direction, and hopefully do a little bit better on the negotiating side than the average here, and maybe get you the property for a little bit less money. Love to hear from you, so reach out if you are a buyer. Okay, if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be watching out for? What do you need to be paying attention to? Well, if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, things might not be as bad as you know, it's portrayed in other YouTube videos and things like that, media out there. We sold more properties this year than we did last year in this first 8 months, so that's a good sign. You know, the only problem is our inventory is very high, even compared to this time last year. Now, like I showed you on all those different categories, the inventory's peaked out, you know, back there somewhere around February, March, and it's been coming down slowly since then. So it's heading in the right direction, but we're still not quite where we need to be to see these prices kind of stabilize and start to go back up. There's still a lot of buyers out there, but there's a lot of properties on the market that are competing for those buyers. Now, hopefully, you know, the interest rates are coming back down, and that will spur in more of these buyers to get in the market, and so hopefully that demand starts to rise. And as long as our inventory continues to go downward, you know, eventually there's some sunlight on the horizon for you. But if you are a seller, you just need to price your property right, and you need to get it looking as best as possible, so you can compete with all of those other listings that are out there. I always tell folks, you know, curb appeal is huge. The first 5 or so seconds when that buyer walks in through the front door is absolutely huge. You know, get a little creative with your marketing strategy or something. Certainly, if you're looking at selling in the near future, I would love to hear from you, and my contact information is right there. We can kind of talk about that. But number one is, you know, get your pricing right, get your property looking good so you can compete against these other listings out there. And, you know, if you're on the market and you're not getting any activity, odds are you're not priced right, and you're not doing yourself any favors, and you're not doing the broader market any favors by leaving these overpriced listings out there on the market. So if you're not getting activity, if your list price is out there and you're not willing to reduce it, maybe you ought to think about taking that off the market for a while, because the quicker we can get some of these overpriced listings off the market, the faster a turnaround this buyer's market is going to have and turn back into a seller's market. So we just need to get this inventory out of the way. So overpriced listings need to go by the wayside, or otherwise price your property right and get it looking nice, and you can expect to get a reasonable offer. I'll show you these statistics that I just showed the buyers. You know, last month, the list price to sale price ratio, the final list price to sell price ratio for the month of August was 98.6%. The average property that was priced right, that ended up closing, sold for 98.6% of their list price. So as long as you're pricing your property right, you should be in good shape. Now, the flip side to that, and I showed the buyers this as well, is here's the original list price to final sale price ratio. It's considerably less than that. So what this is telling me, because last month it was 95%, what this is telling me is there was a lot of overpriced listings that had to go through a number of reductions before they got priced right. But once they got priced right, at least on average, they sold for pretty close to list price. So pricing your property correctly is absolutely crucial. If you're looking for some advice in that direction, certainly reach out to me. I'd love to take a look at your property and tell you what that price looks like, what that correct price looks like in today's market, and get a little bit creative with you to try to get the word out and compete with all these other listings out there. So I'd love to hear from you. Contact information is right there. Reach out, call, text, email, and I would love to chat with you about your property and tell you how we can get that thing ready to go and sold in a timely manner for as much money as absolutely possible. So if you're a seller, you know, there's some sunlight on the horizon, but let's just be smart in the meantime. All right, so let's summarize the Cape Coral real estate market as it looks right now in September of 2024. What is the outlook? What can we expect moving forward? Well, you know, we've had a pretty decent year so far, and we've even had a pretty decent summer. We've certainly sold more properties this year, depending on the category. We've sold a fewer fewer condos this year than last year, but in the other categories, we've sold a fair amount more. And if you're looking at golf access homes, we sold 9% more this year so far than we did at this time last year. So there's some good news out there for the Cape Coral real estate market. Certainly we've got our inventory issues, and that's really the big thing holding us up price-wise right now. Our prices are not going to stabilize or start to go back up until we get this inventory under control. So hopefully more of these sellers will take their overpriced properties off the market, and we'll continue to see that inventory decrease. We certainly have seen that since the high point back in February, March. So hopefully that trend continues. We're going to be watching it pretty closely as we get into the winter months, around that December, January mark, to see if the seasonal inventory causes the inventory numbers to start to go back up. Hopefully, if anything, it'll just level off or even continue to go downward. But we are still selling a fair number of properties. It's just a little bit slower. It's certainly a buyer's market. If you're a buyer out there, you've got a pretty good position right now for, probably for the foreseeable future. There's definitely a window here. I don't have a crystal ball in terms of what's going to happen in the broader economy, but as long as we don't slide into a recession or anything like that, our market's going to stand to continue to be pretty healthy. We've sold a fair number of properties. Pricing has overall been fairly stable. We're certainly down in pricing right now than we were last year, but it seems to somewhat be stabilizing. And as long as, again, we get the inventory under control, I think the pricing will continue to be flat. Our buyer demand will start to go up as these interest rates get back down. So, barring unforeseen circumstances, as the buyer demand starts to increase and as we get this inventory under control, the pricing will flatten out and eventually start to go in the other direction, back into an increasing trend. So we'll be on the watch out for that. Definitely make sure you're subscribed so you can keep up to speed on this Cape Coral real estate market as we move forward. But I gave you advice as a buyer, if you're a buyer in this market, and I gave you advice as a seller. And I think there are some things that you can do to strategize to best position yourself, whether you are one or the other. But if you're a buyer, I definitely would consider, not waiting around too long. There's plenty of people out there that'll tell you there's some big crash on the horizon. But like I said, barring some unforeseen circumstance where we go into a massive recession or depression or something like that, I'm not seeing anything statistically that would indicate that that's on the horizon. Those things usually take you by surprise, so it would be something that comes out of nowhere, I'm sure. But for all intents and purposes, our statistics are still holding up plenty good here in the city of Cape Coral. So I'll be sure to continue to bring you updates as I see them in the statistics every single month on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Thank you so much for being here. I know your time's important, so I value your time. Hopefully you got a little bit out of this video. And if you did and you wouldn't mind, reach over and hit the like button. And again, be subscribed if you're not subscribed. I do, in addition to these videos, I do a weekly video on just good informational topics regarding Southwest Florida and Cape Coral. So I'd love to have you around for that. And if you're in the market, a buyer or seller, reach out to me. My contact information's right there. I would love to hear from you. And thank you again for being here. I'll see you in the next video here in just a few days.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.